What is going on, Bronze Back Slaying homies? My name is Tyler and we are back on another episode of DC Bronzies today. I am out on first ice, finally. It has been a minute. I've been waiting to get on the ice and it's finally here. This ice is actually better than I thought it would be. I know some of my buddies were fishing out here last weekend, so I didn't even know there was ice. There was safe enough ice, but anyway, there is. Spudded my way out here and I've got my ice picks, which are around my neck right now. So I've got my ice pick around my neck, spudded my way out here today. We've got about that much ice, probably more than 2.5 inches actually, so not bad. Jake's got his tip up set out here. Flags are flying for him. They're catching pike. Oh, you got another flag, Jake. Flags are popping for them this morning, so that's pretty cool. Just a bunch of snake pike. I didn't have much time today, so I didn't buy any minnows or anything. We're gonna get to jigging. We're gonna try to catch some bluegills and some crappies. I did just have something big on. It was rip and drag. Jake just caught a bass, so I don't really know what's up with that. I am so pumped to be on first ice, early ice here in Wisconsin. It's gonna be a blast. Can't wait for the season. Cannot wait for walleyes. It's gonna be an absolute hoot. So if you guys want to, subscribe down below. My absolute favorite videos to make are ice fishing videos, and I make a lot of them. So you're not gonna want to miss these. Go subscribe and comment on what kind of ice fishing you guys want to see. All right, let's drop down there. Let's try to catch a couple fish. All right, so I was rocking a plastic on this jig here. I'm just using a little Widowmaker orange jig, and I had a plastic on it. But actually, you know what? I think I'm gonna put some spikes, put a spike on it, and see what happens with that. See if they like that better. The spike is on, and we're dropping down. Usually in this spot there are fish all over the place, which I've marked a ton of fish already. Last year it was tough. These fish are usually really finicky, so it'll be interesting to see today if we can get a couple of bigger fish, maybe some nice crappies. I've caught some nice crappies here, some nice 11 to 12 inchers in the past, and just kind of like an average of like 10. Got a fish on me right now. Let's see, that's a good mark. What he's gonna eat, come on. Raise him up, raise him up. Oh, come on. Dang. I had a solid mark. I mean, he was pretty aggressive. He wanted it too. He rose pretty high up. There we go. Oh, he's wrapped around the deucer. All right, guys. First fish of the 2020 ice season. There you go. It's a pretty one too. On the old Widowmaker. It's a really pretty gill. Alright, let's let him go. Dropping right back down. So what I'm doing right now is I'm fishing about 10 foot of water. These fish are in here pretty good. I've got one marking right now. And what I'm doing is they're not super finicky, but they're finicky enough. So they don't approach real quick. You know, they kind of sit under your jig and look at it. What I do is, like, I've got two on me right now. This one's coming up fast. He didn't eat it. What I'll do is I'll raise these fish up, because when you have multiple, you can usually get them to chase, because they're kind of competing for that jig down there. I'll have them sitting on me. I got one on me right now only. What I'll do is, you know, this one's heading back towards the bottom. Looks like he's going to be heading away. I'll wait about a foot off the bottom. I'll just do this slight jigging motion, pretty tight jigging motion. Wait for him to come up, I'll continue that. If I can get him to kind of follow, I'll continue to do that jigging motion and raise it real slow. Usually when you raise it, then they'll chase. And sometimes they'll get more aggressive and you can kind of get them to trigger that bite. But if they don't do that, a lot of times I'll just let the jig sit still like I'm doing right now. I got one right on me. He's not eating it, so I'm gonna raise it up a little bit, give him a little jig. Oh, he's right on top of me. I'm going to raise him up a little more, see if he comes. He's not coming. I'm going to throw a new spike on there and see if that does a trick. Another thing that I like to do is I'm really big on making sure the knot is tight up to the top so the jig sits horizontal like that. I think that's huge. I always make sure when I pull out of the hole or I catch a fish that I readjust my jig. You got two spikes on there, like I said. Adjust that line so your jig's running horizontal. Toss it right back in there and get right back down there. See if one of these gills wants to bite. Crappies will be oftentimes suspended off the bottom. So most of these fish that I'm seeing right now are coming off the bottom, which indicates to me that they're likely bluegills. But every once in a while, you'll see there's something higher up suspended in the water column appear, and that's oftentimes a crappie. I haven't seen many of them today, but a lot of times if I go over by these docks, there'll be more crappies kind of sitting right around the posts. Another thing I'm pretty big on too is hole hopping. Always like to be mobile, move around. If you're not marking fish, go drill some new holes. Always worth trying. Alright, I got a fish on me right now. This one's gonna eat. Raise him up a little bit. Right on me. Ooh, he ate it. I was about to raise it and he ate it. Alright, here we go. There we go. Small. Oh, it's not that small. Jeez, these gills have pretty colors right now. Oh! Get back, you better. Oh, you got her. Come on. There he goes. Got some suspended marks down there as well. I'm gonna see if this might be a crappie. Oh, such a light bite. Barely ate it, I just felt him tap it. That's the other thing about these finicky fish is they tend to bite super, super light. Oh, that's a better one. Is that a crappie? Crappie! There you go. Nice little crappie. Alright, we're gonna let him go. Alright guys, as you saw, not a bad crappie there at all. Definitely not the size that I'd love to get, but crappie's a crappie in my book. As long as it's half decent size like that one was. Like I said, when they're finicky, they bite really, really light. So it's key to have a rod. Right here I've got the tuned up custom bullwhip. It's key to have a rod with a very soft tip. Any little pull of the line, you're gonna be able to see. And with this rod, you can even feel it oftentimes too. Huge to have a sensitive rod for these panfish, especially when they're finicky. All right, back to the spot I started at earlier. I was marking a lot more fish here. Looks like one's already coming up off bottom for it. There we go. Oh. Small but feisty. Small but feisty. There's another gill for you guys. Send him back. That's the great thing about first ice is even if you have an area where the fish are normally finicky like here, you know, they're a lot more likely to bite just because they haven't been pressured. And that's why I love first ice in general, because people don't get to the fish quite as soon as maybe you do. Two competing, always a good sign. Well, this one's a way up. This is a better mark too. Well, that's better. See him under the ice, that's really cool. Ooh, that's not a bad gill at all. If I was eating fish, 100% that's an eater if I was eating fish. Look at that. That widowmaker in his mouth. Well folks, just a beautiful gill right here. Look at that. It's a pretty decent sized one. Definitely would be an eater if I was eating fish, but we're gonna be letting him go. Alright, let's send this bad boy back. Well guys, this is going way better than I expected. Usually the spot has some really finicky panfish. The bluegills and the crappies are tough to catch here. You catch them, but you know, they're just tough. Last year in this spot, I had maybe like one good outing right at the start of first ice, and after that, it wasn't good. For some reason, the crappies were really small, the bluegills weren't real great, but they were super finicky. The fish were really tough to catch. And when that happens, you really have to hone in on a couple things. One is jig cadence. Jig cadence is, in my opinion, one of the biggest things for ice fishing that can make or break you catching fish. I think that you gotta figure it out, you know, with your Vexilar, with your sonar, with any of those units that you've really gotta figure out what those fish want. And what I do is, you know, I'll be fishing. I try different jig cadences. You know, I try, you know, lifting the bait. I try stopping the bait and just letting it sit. Try all sorts of different stuff. But what you want to do is you want to focus on how those fish are reacting on your sonar. If those fish are chasing hard, chasing fast, they might be aggressive. But sometimes when they're finicky, you know, they don't do that, right? Sometimes sometimes you'll figure out by doing a certain jig cadence or moving your jig in a certain way, or maybe even keeping it still, you'll get them to react, get that reaction bite out of them. You'll get them to move faster when they weren't before. So that's one thing you really got to hone in on and really pay attention to, because that can be really, really huge on whether or not you'll be catching fish in an area where the fish are a little bit tough to catch, a little bit finicky. And two, like I said earlier, having a soft tip on your rod, a good panfish noodle rod, is key, because when they're so finicky, sometimes you don't even feel them bite, you don't even see them bite. They'll just put slack in your line because they'll suck it in. They'll sit kind of on the edge of their mouth, and before you know it, you go to set the hook and you can't even hook them because they just barely bite it. So those are just kind of some tips I've got for you guys for really finicky early ice bluegills. But as I said before, the good thing about early ice is generally you get on the ice before most people. It's always good to get out early. The earlier the better, because you can get on those fish before anyone else has, and then they're less pressured. If you guys got any questions, please leave them down below. I'll be so happy to answer them. Message me on Instagram. Love to chat with you guys and DM with you guys. But I'm gonna keep fishing here. I'm having a good time catching some nice fish. Just wanted to kind of stop and break down what I'm doing and let you guys know how things are going. I'll show you the rod I'm rocking. Right now I'm using a tuned up custom with a Fluger President on there. Got 2-pound fluorocarbon ice line. This is a 30-inch tuned up custom bullwhip. And as you can see, it's got that really light rod tip. Probably won't focus here. Great rod for panfish. One thing that I was going to mention too is for those of you that are newer to ice fishing and haven't used a unit like a Vexilar or any sort of sonar like this, one thing that you got to learn to do when you are using it, so once you have a fish on you, right, you have to also watch your rod tip. So I got a fish below me right now, right? I'm looking at the fish. He's close. All right, there's my rod tip. My rod tip went. I always got to watch my rod tip as that's another half decent gill. So you got to be watching the fish as it comes up, but once it's up right on your jig, then I'll usually transition my eyes, per se, whatever you want to call it. I'll look at my rod tip instead of my Vexilar, right? So that I can see when that fish does bite, knowing that it's right on top of me. That's another good gill. Oops. I seem to be liking this orange and yellow tungsten. 4mm tungsten jig. That's pretty key, is having a tungsten jig. What that does, instead of a lead jig, drops a lot faster, falls a lot faster, and it's heavier for the size that it is, right? So if I have a lead jig of the same size, it's not gonna be nearly as heavy as a tungsten jig of that same size. So that's why I'm using tungsten. That's a better one, I think. Yeah, dang, not a bad kill, really. Like I said, if I was keeping, this is like a perfect keeping size in my opinion, probably like a 7.5 incher. Once again, not a bad gill. Ice is cracking, sun's coming out. It's gonna be warm today, so that's why I wanted to get out, because I don't know if this ice is gonna be any good by the weekend. Oh, that was probably crappie. It was in his mouth. I didn't even feel him bite. He was so light. Or the big bluegills will sometimes do that. I got 2 on me now. Or a small bluegill. No, that's a good one. Another good gill. Well, I wouldn't say real good, but one's a little bit smaller, but still not a bad fish. Can't complain about that. Go. That's a better one. Always wrapped around my booster. Oh, beautiful fish though. Oh my gosh. Like, look at that thing. Awesome. Alright, time for a new spike. That one gill took my others. Could use some refresh. Alright, there we go. Ooh, that one's racing. That one's racing. It's a good mark. Come on. Oh, that feels good. That feels really good. This transducer, oh, that's a good fish. Oh, no wonder it's a largie. A little largie. I was gonna say, this does not feel like a small bluegill. Well, largemouth. That's funny. He didn't have any lateral line there. I can't even see it. Alright. Buddy's going back. There's another. Oh. That's another good one. Yeah, not a bad fish. Yeah, that might be the biggest one of the day yet. Let's go, guys. First ice. Filming a video right now. Not bad for the bluegills this morning. Having a ton of fun. Sometimes you want to try a smaller jig down to 3mm. That's a really tiny jig, but sometimes you gotta do that. I'm using a 4 right now, and that's been fine. And always be willing to try plastics. There was one year, I think it was last year, I was using a lot of red plastics. I'm a big fan of red plastics, any plastics for that matter, but the red was really doing well for me. Those plastics, just the single tail plastics, those can be really huge. Sometimes the fish like those more than waxworms or spikes, but I'm finding today that I think the spikes are probably doing the trick for me, so that's what's working out. I'm just using little red spikes. Little red spikes there, if you can even see them. Yeah, there they are. Well, folks, stuff really slowed down here in the last half hour. I'm not marking quite as many fish. The fish that are coming in are not biting. They're being really, really finicky. So I think I'm gonna head out. I do have a class that I gotta get to. Can't wait to be done with school here for the semester so I can be out doing a bunch of ice fishing. I'm really looking forward to that. Thank you guys so much for watching today's episode. Go check out my Instagram at DC Bronzies and subscribe if you have not already. Until next episode, we'll see you in the next one. Peace.